Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the final week of March. We're going to peek a little bit into April to round out the week. My name is Christa of Practical Astros. I'm here with my Astera Sophia Kairos founding member sisters, a long title for Sonia of Celestia Astrology. We're going to look at March 26th through April 2nd and the big astrological transits that define this week, which is quite a big week. If you've been kind of joining us through the month, we've been looking at all these transits through the month of March. March is very significant for many reasons. We've got one that we'll talk about this week, Neptune entering Aries on the 30th, but we've had some other pretty big ones too. So we've had the lunar eclipse happen in the middle of the month. The sun has entered Aries. At this point, we have all of this at our back, and we're looking forward to this final week of March. So welcome, Sonia. Are you ready for this final week of March?
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, we got a lot.
Yep. Yeah, so the times that are displayed on the screen are for universal time. So just adjust it for your own time zone. If you're in the US, East Coast, you just -5. If you're West Coast, you -8. And so we've had two Kazimis last week, Venus and Mercury back to back between Sunday and Monday last week. And now they have left Aries and they're going to be going into Pisces, where they will immediately run into Neptune and the North Node because they're back there at those final degrees of Pisces. We'll look at Venus leaving Aries, meeting Neptune and Pisces. Then we're going to see the solar eclipse in Aries, the very last one for this cycle. Then we'll look at Mercury retrograde back into Pisces and meeting Neptune and the North Node. And then, drum roll, Neptune enters Aries, which we have not seen since the 1860s. So no one alive, unless you're a time traveler, has ever experienced this. And so we all get to experience a little bit of this for this year. It's going to retrograde back into Pisces, and then we'll get it again fully next year. But yeah, this will be the ingress of an outer planet like this. It takes so long to go through all the signs. When it enters signs, especially Aries, which is the beginning of the zodiacal series, it feels extra punchy to have an outer planet go into Aries for the first time in a long time. Saturn is also going to be going into Aries, but we have that every 27 to 30 years. Not that it's insignificant, but it's not as loud and momentous as a planet like Neptune. And 2025, we have a couple of these. We have Pluto into Aquarius, which we haven't had for a very long time, hundreds of years. We're going to have Uranus and Gemini, which we haven't had for a very long time. And we have Neptune going into Aries. The second of those, Pluto moved into Aquarius fully. And so we're definitely in that for the next couple of decades. But Neptune goes into Aries at the very end of this month. And so if you listen to other astrology channels, a lot of people are going to be talking about this because this is a game changer.
It really is, isn't it?
All right, let's look at the first one. Neptune conjoins Venus here at that anaretic degree in Pisces. Pisces exaltation ruler is Venus. It exalts at 27 degrees, which is where the North Node is. And the ruler of Pisces is Jupiter over there in Gemini at 15 degrees.
Yeah, that's nice, isn't it? That they've got that connection site to their ruler and their exaltation ruler is present.
Yep. It's their sight. When things are in sight, they can communicate. They can argue, but at least there's communication. So if you have a problem, you can at least communicate that with the person that you have a problem with. There is at least that engagement. So we have Neptune merging with Venus. Now it did this before as Venus was going through Pisces before it went into Aries, but then there is a retrograde. Venus has Kazemi'd the sun, has merged with Mercury, and now it is merging with Neptune. So Venus is on a wild journey of merging with all these other planets. This is the very final time it will conjoin Neptune. That's right, because Neptune is going to be moving into Aries. Yeah, I mean, this
in Aries, but they won't meet again in Pisces.
Yeah, while we are alive. So enjoy it while it lasts. Yep. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously them meeting in Pisces is that bit more special because Neptune is, for modern astrologers, is the ruler of Pisces, although for us as traditional astrologers, it's Jupiter and Venus. But Neptune is still a watery significator kind of planet. So to see it in Pisces, it feels more comfy and at home than it does in a fiery martial place of Aries. So it just has more of an affinity to us, even so. Even if we don't think of it as the ruler, we still can feel that it's more comfortable there, and that in Aries, things may get more tense. And Venus being exalted, that's a really nice feeling. I mean, I think when we've spoken about it before, we've just said it's like a nice spa day with your girlfriends. It's just got that vibe of everybody kicking back and have face masks on and champagne in hand or whatever, and just laughing and giggling and telling good stories and just friendships and like just that idealization of nice things, spending a nice time, spoiling yourself, indulging, chocolate on your strawberries. It's like everything that you can just top off really nicely. Beware of romantic illusions, because Venus signifies love and Neptune signifies confusion and the fog and the deceptions, but it passes quickly. It's just a day that they meet. But yeah, with it being the last time, there's a fated element with the nodes there, and of course all these planets together. We've got the moon, and the moon can be our translator that brings things to Earth. So we've got that extra ability of the moon to bring that through to us, for the moon to like key us into things and bring it down into the material. Pisces, it's very mystical and ethereal and hard to connect with, sometimes hard to put our finger on exactly what it is. Pisces is known to not have those boundaries, but sometimes I feel with the moon there co-present, maybe it's easier for us to connect and be sure exactly what it is, even if it's not something material, to know exactly what that experience is for us. But it just feels like we're easing into a big week in a nice way.
Yeah, and the ruler, and that's kind of, after not really being sure, okay, are they conjoining for the last time in Pisces or not? They are. So what's the ruler of Pisces? It's Jupiter. Jupiter is in Gemini, ruled by Mercury, that just went through the cazimi, and Aries, and Mercury itself will also conjoin Neptune. And so then I was looking at, okay, well, the next time after Venus goes direct, it will cazimi Neptune and Aries. So I just looked at that chart real quick just to kind of look at it. And okay, well, the ruler of Aries is Mars. Mars will be at 6 degrees Leo at that time. 6 degrees Leo was the station of retrograde last year. So it will be out of shadow at that point, which informs that cazimi of Venus and Neptune. So it is quite a different shift of this moment with Neptune and Venus conjoining as the next time Neptune and Venus conjoin in Aries, because it's going to be connected with a ruler that is now fully direct. And we'll talk about that in May when we get to May, 2 months from now. But Pisces is such a reminiscent, nostalgic sign that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, having the moon there. But all of that is being informed by that direct Jupiter in Gemini, which is mercurial. Mercury just went through that cazimi. So it's like all of these things are tangentially related to each other, but it is like this like last hurrah. It's almost like a wake. It's a celebration of things that we love and we care about, but we know are going away. And there is going to be new memories to be made with Venus and Neptune both going into Aries and connecting again. But at this point, it does feel it's a little tinged with sadness and nostalgia of honoring the things that we love, because we know that way of loving might be going away, so that we can chart new waters with Neptune and Venus together in Aries. Yes. I'm a little sad for it. I think it'll be very sweet, but a little sad for it.
Yeah. And interesting too with the node there that sometimes nodes can be seen as amplifying things. So those emotions being heightened. And also the node is thought of as good with a good one and bad with a bad one.
It's got both.
Which way is it going to go this time? Is like, yeah, it's in between them both. It's confused. So I like to think, okay, well, it's in a sign of the two benefics. It's ruled by Jupiter. It's exalted. Venus is the exaltation ruler.
And she's slightly closer than Saturn. So I think she has a bit more influence. And she's retrograde, so she is also moving towards it. It's almost like who can get to the node faster to inform what is amplified.
So I'm coming down on good with a good one.
Yeah. It's almost like this whole retrograde story is so that she can like be with the node first before Saturn gets to it.
Yeah, let's race to the nodes. Yeah. New game show, an astrological game show. And the benefics get there first. But yeah, I mean, even that is like the confusion of the Neptune, isn't it? It's or is it that? And the potential for both, and just okay, well, let's delineate it this way.
It's Jupiter's day too. Like if you have access to like a warm infinity pool, like if you have a hotel that's near that you can kind of sneak in and like go swim in their infinity pool, like this is a good day to do that, to just submerge, float tank, salt bath, just like really be in that and have a good shower cry, whatever it is, have a good conversation with a loved one, of remembering kind of good times, getting lost in like a session of baking traditional recipes from, your family, or it's like lean into the goodness of it, get lost in that. That Neptune, the best thing about Neptune is that you're able to get lost. The worst thing about Neptune is that you're able to get lost. So choosing the best way to get lost so that it's not, something that is just more damaging, but just kind of the beauty that Neptune and Venus can have with each other. And tell us what it is. If you have ideas of what you want to do on this day, what is the best way that you get lost? Is it just sitting and eating an entire key lime pie by yourself with nobody bothering you with your phone notifications off? Tell us. We want to hear how it expresses itself, because astrology can express itself in a multitude of ways. So tell us what you imagine it to be, because the imaginary realm is also that Piscean realm with Neptune and the North Node and Venus there and the moon. Saturn maybe gives us the container. We are the Saturnine container for you to put your imaginary ways of how you get lost with that Neptune Venus conjunction. Let us know what you think it would be.
Yeah, and as always, it's the healthy container, isn't it? It's the giving the container for something, because with Saturn, it wants some boundaries, some restriction to it. So you creating that container creates that, satisfies Saturn, makes Saturn happy. Okay, this is the boundaries of this getting lostness that I've created. I'm going to get lost here. So yeah, I did check the dates. This is the second pass. So yeah, like we said, we spoke about this before. And the first was the 1st of February, and they met at 27 degrees, which, as we said, was Venus's exaltation degree. And it was conjunct the North Node as well then. And this is the second. And the third will be at 01 Aries on the 2nd of May. And then they next meet after that at 01 Aries again, and that will be conjunct Saturn. So Saturn will also have his say. So Saturn's traveling very close to Neptune once they get into Aries. And also one of our teachers from Night Like Michelle has been doing a series on the planets, and I was interested in what she said about Venus. That made me think of this, about the alchemical processes of the different planets. And for Venus, she was talking about coagulation, and that it's driven by desire. What do we seek to merge with? And it just made me think, merging being so Piscean as well, and coagulation, but that image of like Neptune and Venus coagulating somehow in this watery kind of way, driven by desire. So think about what you desire as well on that day, and seek to merge with, and maybe symbolically bring that in if you are planning to do something. We don't like the manifest word, but if you're doing ritual, you maybe want to envision it somehow.
I think I've said it before, because I say it often, as like things exist twice, at least. First in the imagination land, and before you manifest it or make real. So if you want something to become real, it's like taking the time to sit and imagine what that looks like from as many facets as you can, and getting lost and creating that. It's like I did this virtual reality once, where it's like you can have a paintbrush and you can paint things 3D around you. It's like we can also just do that in our imagination. You can paint the canvas around you to see like what kind of world do you want to be in, what kind of environment do you want to be in, what do you want to create. Imagine it first. That's the best chance for it to become real, is if you take the time to kind of paint it out in your mind.
Really see how it looks like, and then hold that vision.
And tell other people. When you tell other people, like people that you trust, that becomes it makes it a little bit more real. You're like, oh, well, now I feel a little obligation to maybe bringing that baby to life, or bringing that creation to form, because I've told someone that I had the idea about it, and they might ask me about it, and I want to make it real. And when you say it out loud, it is like casting that spell of, then it becomes a little bit more when you say it out loud to someone else.
Spoken it into the world, given it that life force energy of your breath. Are we ready?
Let's go.
Okay, 9.
Go boldly. Let's go boldly.
We have this go boldly eclipse in the first decan of Aries. So bringing all that Aries martial power, claim your kingdom, jump first, think later. Self-mastery. So it really is this double-bladed axe. So astrologer Kira Reiber calls it battle, and Austin Coppock calls it the double-bladed axe. So we see that, and in tarot it's the 2 of Wands, that what we were just talking about, envisaging. It's like that energy of envisaging a future, staring out to sea and imagining what your kingdom might be. And it's ruled by Mars. So although we only show one of the decan rulers, I did the decan course with Austin Coppock, and he teaches us to use both the Chaldean decan system, which is this one, and also the triplicity method. So because Aries is a fire sign, Mars is the next triplicity ruler. So it's a double decan, and that adds more focus and intensity of that martial energy. So again, we look to Mars and the fact that Mars is in that watery sign of Cancer, but also cardinal and squaring. So we bring in that Mars and look, we see Chiron and Mars exact in that square. So that is significant. And also that it's co-present retrograde Mercury and Chiron. We see Mercury in the contrantitia with Neptune, Mercury at 0. So it's moving out of that, I would say, flowing forth from that. So it was exact when it was at 1 degree. And it's coming out of it now. And a whole sign sextile with Jupiter, whose Mercury is in Mercury's temple, but a whole sign sextile with Pluto that it's moving away from, flowing forth from. And yeah, Chiron and Mars in that square just feels very significant, drawing my eye, but of course not in the same decan as the actual eclipse. So this is a solar partial eclipse this time. So it's not a total eclipse as the first one. So we've been in this window of eclipse energy for the 2 weeks between the eclipses. And this is what the squirrel has to say, that we are at the very start of the zodiacal year. There's no time to waste. When the Aries 1 squirrel bounces into the picture, it's time to boldly go forth and conquer. He may be little, but he is fierce, and he's not afraid to leave his comfort zone in pursuit of what he desires. So with his axe in hand, he's ready to carve his own path, away from the known and into the new. Very much an Aries signification. Now is the time for direct action and to implement your plans. Find your independence and your autonomy and your self-reliance. So yeah, just go for it energy, go boldly. And that's what we're being urged to do in this decan. And then Bernadette Brady comes in with a delineation of the eclipse, which is the same as it was for the lunar eclipse because they're paired. And she's warning us to be a bit more careful. So make sure that axe has a blade guard on it as you're going boldly through, carving your way. So she says, the same as she did before, a very physically expressive Saros series, that accidents can happen, great physical effort, violence, or sudden physical experiences. So these could be experienced positively, for example, the first time snow skiing, or negatively in terms of accidents and so on. So again, careful with that axe while you're carving your path. So the approach to take with this Saros series is affecting a chart. So that's really if it's affecting your chart. If there's something at 09 or in the cardinal signs, or if you're in a Mars year, it's more important for you to take this heed, is not to hide away, but to undertake some kind of physical activity with a watchful eye to safety. So again, a healthy container. Be aware that Mars needs to take that physical activity, but be careful about it.
Yeah, they kind of like they contradict each other, saying like,
Yes.
go ahead, just jump out and claim it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like be the fool and just like leap off. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, Mars is not in great condition still because it's in Cancer.
Yeah.
No, it's and it's square Chiron, like pretty harshly. It's been squaring it. It's just past, it's like half a degree past it, but it's still within that degree square. And so, maybe what your impulse to claim your kingdom, to jump first, to think, ask forgiveness rather than permission. That could cause injury. And especially, the moon can just relate. If you have a fiery moon, like if you have a Mars ruled moon, if you have a Scorpio moon or an Aries moon, I mean, this could like speak to just your physical body. And I think having a blade guard on your double axe, might save you. So, at moments of, okay, it's a Saturday, moments of an eclipse, maybe you're not really paying attention, like, oh yeah, it's an eclipse, how is it going to affect me? Is it going to affect me? I think that any sort of eclipse, I'm just a little bit cautious because I feel like there are things that are out of my control. You do feel a little bit more pushed by the winds of fate. And so there are some days where it feels like I've got my guardian angels around me, or I've got supportive people, and then I'm safe. I can just kind of take this risk and like, I have a good feeling about it. I'm just going to take the risk. This doesn't feel like that day. It feels like the day of like maybe rushing out to go help someone, or go rushing out to like speak your mind because you really are off that you were challenged. It's like rushing into traffic to go save a dog. It's like that impulsive jump first, think later. Be careful. I would be careful just with my own self to be mindful of like really, like tread carefully on this day, because I feel like there might be things that that fate just unfolds in front of you, where you're called to be heroic, you're called to be that martyr, you know, you're called to go defend, but it might be in your best interest, even if you're called to go boldly, that because it's this eclipse, maybe you should be more cautious than your intuition is telling you to be. I am a fan of listening to your intuition, but you know, not everybody's intuition they trust, you know, for many reasons. Like if you have trauma that is around, that is still kind of stored in the body, or just the memory of it, like maybe you don't trust your own intuition to like lead you to the right conclusions. This is the kind of the day that I would kind of tell everybody, just maybe be a bit more cautious, even if you don't feel like you need to be. I feel like it's just in our best interest. And part of it is that Mercury retrograde, the cazimi with Venus, the cazimi with Mercury, that Mercury retrograde is still that there is a slowness. There is a little bit of caution here. Maybe what you're thinking, it's that contra intuition with Neptune. So there is that opposition through confusion. There is a retrograde Mercury, which is like a reflection back. You know, Mercury is in Aries, which is a forward thinking, fast thinking Mercury, but it's retrograde. So it's a little cautious. Maybe that's the saving grace of being a little bit more cautious as a practice, especially for this day, for this final Aries eclipse in this series. I feel like I'm leaning more into the Bernadette Brady suggestions than the.
Yeah, I think the eclipse delineation kind of trumps the decan delineation, just because of, you know, the decan can apply to just planets in that decan, whereas obviously the fact that its eclipse comes around less often. And also it's an out of sign eclipse. The nodes are obviously in Pisces and Virgo. That can happen where the moon and sun meet out of sign. So this is the last Aries eclipse as well. So that is significant as well. From now on, we're just going to get, especially in Pisces, we're only going to see lunar eclipses in Pisces, the whole of that transit, which I think is fairly...
We mostly saw solar eclipses in Aries. I don't know that it was complete, but it was the majority of these eclipses in this Aries Libra cycle. When they happened in Aries, they were mostly solar eclipses, which feels Aries. Like now we'll just deal with the sun.
It does, yeah. Yeah, sun here. It's not a great place for the moon, I suppose.
Yeah, they're transiting just that story that Venus and Mercury are visiting. They're transiting kind of that. Okay, so it is an out of sign eclipse. We have a 9-degree luminary in Aries, and we have the node at 27 Pisces. That's kind of the journey route that Mercury and Venus are taking, is between those degrees. So that's why it all feels connected just within that storyline between that first decan of Aries, the last decan of Pisces, how those houses weave together, the rulers of those houses, the rulers of those decans, what sort of return is needed that informs this, and that the fatedness of the eclipse is also another kind of punch in the punch card of all the things that you're returning to that have to do with the storyline. And the cazimis with Venus and Mercury prior to this, I feel like might give us insight of this. Yeah, go boldly, but carry a big stick. Maybe just carry a big stick and not a big axe on this day.
And don't poke yourself in the eye with it, and just beware, you know, take the warning on board and plan carefully. I mean, we always say with the Mercury retrograde anyway to plan carefully, your plans double check. And even more so with this. The time and date website tells us that this is, I mean, obviously it's a partial, so it's not as dramatic as a total solar eclipse, but there's still going to be visibility across Europe, the north of Asia, north and west of Africa, much of North America, north in South America, if that makes sense.
The northern part of South, closer to the equator.
Yeah, and the Atlantic and Arctic. And this is from Sarah series 149, and it's the 21st eclipse in that series, if you follow them. So I've got my little graphic that tells us what a partial solar eclipse looks like. So we see the moon is casting a shadow. Let's start at the top. A solar eclipse happens when the moon passes between the Earth and the sun. It blocks the sunlight from reaching certain areas on the Earth. And obviously to us, it looks like the sun's being blocked out. During a solar eclipse, the moon casts a shadow onto the Earth's surface. And there are 3 types of solar eclipse. So this is the one we've got this time, a partial solar eclipse. But there can also be this annular solar eclipse called the Ring of Fire, and you see this lovely glow. And also the total, where you just get like an almost aura of light around. So this is the one this one is the partial. So there will still be a significant amount.
Still impressive, yeah.
Almost like the shape of a crescent moon. So quite interesting. Was there anything more you wanted to say about the chart?
No, I think it'll be just, a continuation of other themes that the other players are informing us with the Pisces and Aries houses.
Yeah. And also with the timing of it, I mean, I don't think we've even quoted Chris Brennan, or did we? Great endings and great beginnings. And with eclipses, like quite often, obviously that 2-week window between the eclipses, and often he says like 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after, so another 2 weeks or so. But also events can play out if it's a small event, a small beginning that's going to become a significant beginning. Solar eclipses quite often can be the seeding moment, obviously.
The moon there, the exact,
With the new moon there, it's a seeding moment. I didn't mean to say full moon, it's a new moon, where the moon and the sun are together.
Yeah, and just like how the eclipses themselves are moving from Aries to Pisces. The North Node left Aries and went into Pisces, and this retrograde of Mercury and Venus is going from Aries into Pisces. Like it all feels intricately woven together.
Yeah, it's worth like reflecting back over the last 18 months and what has been concluded in the Aries Libra. So your chart as well, if you can identify what those themes have been for you, that helps understand what eclipses are. And then you've got a note, a sort of Cliff's Notes for when they come next time. For 8 years and 18 years time, you can identify those overarching themes. And then we come to Neptune conjunct Mercury,
which is a little different than Mercury was at 0 degrees Aries during that eclipse moment, and it has gone back because it's retrograde, and now it's conjoining Neptune, just like Venus conjoined to Neptune. Mercury is exiled and fallen here in Pisces. It's conjoining Neptune. So much, it's just like a big pot of soup of confusion right here this day. I would not choose this day to like do your taxes or try to plan something very complicated. I would choose this day to just detach from the details and just enjoy things that are don't choose things that frustrate you on this day. It's a Sunday. Try to just escape, which is Neptunian, escape away from the things that cause clear frustration. If you like doing taxes and you like kind of getting lost in numbers, or you like doing planning, sure, but it's not really primed for the detail-oriented nature that Mercury is because of that fallen, it's exiled, and it's retrograde, and it's conjoined Neptune. It's like, it's just a heavy hitter of a day of unclarity. And we need those too. We can't always be clear and decisive and on point and regimented. It's just like a day of escape from the news, escape from obligation. I feel like if you try to force something that needs a lot of, if there's a lot of moving parts, they're probably going to fall to pieces on that day. So putting yourself in a position where if the pieces fall, it's not that big of a deal. It's not so consequential,
Yeah, that's a good point. I was actually considering that date for a launch of my Guardian reading, and now I'm reconsidering that.
Yeah.
Thinking of the Mercury Neptune as a good significator, but yeah, maybe not.
Like for yours, like the type of reading that Sonia is about to launch is such a beautiful way to dive into your chart. And, like, honestly, like launching it on that day, I mean, we can look at, what it means to do electional astrology, but it's like, if you're drawn to the beautiful thing about a Mercury day is kind of perfect for the type of reading that you do, because it's going in unconventional ways, which, an exiled planet is unconventional, but the retrogradeness of it, I just see as delays in just the technology of launching something, the slowness of having it come to form in a way that you want to see it. So, I mean, I think that there's troubles to it, but like for that magical realm, like the kind of reading that you're doing is kind of that magical realm. Like if you do sort of magical work, like it's kind of a curious, unconventional day to do things, but expect maybe your computer to just freeze up, or you to get into a long conversation that delays the launch. I mean, it's like, I just feel like if things are frustrating, you heard it from me, like I warned you that it might be frustrating. So like whatever you can do to just put down the obligation so that it's less frustrating, because you can lean into the beautiful piece of it. It's like Venus is right there too. Venus is at home in her exalted signs. Maybe Mercury is delivering something really unconventional and beautiful, like some sort of inspirational message that comes through that limitlessness of Neptune. You know, I don't dislike the day at all. I just feel like there's days to work in the office, and this doesn't feel like one of them.
No, I'll have to give that some more thought, I think. I just
Yeah.
thought the two together were a great signification. I forgot about the retrograde, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see.
But just as a plug for Sonia's Guardian reading, whatever day she happens to choose to launch it, I would suggest that she gave me a Guardian reading back in January, and it was exquisite. So highly, highly, highly recommend that you get one for yourself. I have studied astrology a long time, and I've had lots of readings, and I love them, but nothing has stood out like Sonia's guardianship reading. It is unlike any other reading I have ever had before. So highly recommend.
Wow, thank you. I appreciate that.
It's true. So yeah, what are your thoughts just on this day? I mean, we have Saturn. Saturn's pretty close, to the North Node. Venus is still closer. Mercury and Neptune are still closer. Saturn is still there, informing the Pisces house. And we still have Mars. Mars is a minute away from getting out of degree-based square with Chiron. So it's close enough at this point. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, because we've got like so much happening even on that day. I've got at 2:18 was when Mercury retrograded back to Pisces. So 2:18 p.m. in London. 26, Mercury meets Neptune. Like really anoretic. I mean, look where Neptune is. It's at 29:59. Like it's literally got its toes into the Aries fire. It's like so hot. It's starting to hurt.
Very steamy. Steamy, yeah.
Really is. And then at 12:01 is when Neptune actually enters Aries. So hours later.
Yeah.
It just feels so much. Neptune, Venus, North Node, Saturn. I mean, we've got used to that combination, but obviously Mercury is literally just joined the party that day and Neptune getting ready to go. It's like everybody's like a busy railway station where everybody's got their cases and they're banging into each other because, one's going in one direction, one's going in the other direction. It's like, who's supposed to be where? We don't know. Mercury's retrograde. Everybody's got their tickets muddled.
Yeah.
It just feels, and like you say, we've still got that Mars and Chiron. Somebody's crying in the corner. There's heartbreak happening somewhere. Rail stations are like that liminal place, but also that parting place where there's painful goodbyes happening. You kind of feel that, don't you? That, especially with that Neptune departing, and it will return, so it's not a farewell forever. But there's some of these connections are farewell forever. We won't see them again. Meeting in Aries next time.
Yeah, my first astrology teacher, Kelly Lee Phipps, talked about he would go to a train station or an airport and he would like to kind of pinpoint the elemental archetypes at the airport. It's like, the fire signs are the ones just like barreling through to get to the ticket counter first. And the earth signs are like double checking that they have their tickets and they haven't forgot their luggage and what their itinerary is. And the air signs are just like have their headphones on their devices, on their computer, reading, just like, in kind of an intellectual space. But the water signs are just like sobbing and crying and hugging each other. They're so excited or they're so nostalgic, and just like how the moment of like the liminal space of a train station or a bus depot or an airport, like we all cross paths here. And this like crying session of all of those planets there in Pisces, where, two of them just came from Aries, but Neptune's about to go. And then so is Saturn. It's like, then Mercury and Venus are going to go back. It's like so much like just emotional confusion. But I could see Neptune, it's like has its sights, because hours later it's like leaping over into Aries. And the Anoractic degree, they call it degree of crisis. It's like this, like such a pressurized point where it's, it's like when a flower bud, like a ranunculus, it's like so tightly packed. All those petals are tightly packed. And like, you just need a tiny bit of reprieve for the whole thing to just blossom open. And that to me is like that tightly packed, super, inflated flower bud is the 29th degree, and that 0 degree is when it just like blossoms open. Yeah, Mercury kind of retrograding back, conjoining that. I feel like just that entire day, I know astrologers have looked at March 30th, 2025 for years, because you have this balance of that Venus, Mercury retrograde and Neptune kind of going over all within a couple of hours of each other. Pretty loud.
Certainly is that. Yeah. I mean, again, for London, it's in our third house of networks and communities and everything as well. So that's interesting. It'll be different houses for different locations. So it's worth checking what house it's in for you personally in your chart, what house Pisces occupies and what house Aries occupies, but also what house for your local area, your town or your city?
Yeah, it'll be first house for my location. So all of this is happening between the 12th and the 1st.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, that's the most significant jump of all, isn't it, from the 12th to the 1st? And yeah, Neptune, I think, like opening ourselves, like the inner and outer worlds, what we talked about before about Neptune being like those chthonic places, those unexplored places that we don't know about, and then Mercury being the psychopomp, the bridge between the worlds. Having them come together right at this point with Mercury right on that cusp just feels so significant. Like that Mercury's brought that message from Aries and back to Neptune, and then Neptune's going to make the jump as soon as it's got that message. As soon as they have that meeting, Mercury's off. So this is the last piece of the puzzle, is whatever Mercury has carried from his meeting with the sun, it's brought back to Neptune.
And I'm corrected. The Neptune ingress into Aries is Aries rising. The conjunction between Mercury and Neptune for my location is Scorpio rising. So this is happening in the 5th house. It's fun just to kind of look and see, because it's happening around 11 o'clock Eastern time for the US. So we get it the night before. We get it Saturday night. Yeah, because it's like 3 o'clock in the morning your time on Sunday. So it's just like that, for if you're in the UK, if you're in Ireland, it's happening, in the middle of the night, most likely at that 3 o'clock hour, 3 to 4 o'clock hour. And it's, that's kind of when you're going to be in like the heightened REM sleep, so make the effort to write down the dream, because Mercury is a psychopomp combined with Neptune. I mean, that, don't eat a lot of food before you go to bed so that you don't sleep too heavy. Don't drink alcohol the night before, smoke weed so that you have mind clear. Don't take a sleeping aid if you can help it. Like, go to sleep as like light as possible so that you have that. You can even drink like extra water to wake yourself up, to go to the bathroom, so that you're in that, you can kind of catch that liminal space of sleep, so that you have like a really vivid REM sleep, and then see what dreams come through for that middle of the night for those in the UK and Ireland. Yeah, exciting. I should just fly and come see Sonia so that I can have that moment in the middle of the night.
And yeah, I've got some dates, just taking it back down to grounding. The dates they met on the 2nd of March, when Mercury was direct. So that was the first pass. It's now retrograde, and the third pass will be on the 17th of April, but I haven't said where.
That's going to happen.
Aries, isn't it?
Yeah, it's at 0 degree, 38 minute Aries. Yeah.
And then after that, it'll be April 20 Aries.
That's at 2 degrees Aries, so not very far. And then at 4 degrees Aries in 2027, it'll be, every year it's going to be incrementally, it's going to be in that first decan of Aries for a while. Yeah. Until 2030, it will be in the first decan of Aries.
Wow.
We got a ways. 2030 is only 5 years from now. It seems a lot further out in the future.
Doesn't it? It's like a whole different place, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, we're getting scarily close to it. Mind you, I still can't get my head around the fact that we're in the 2020s sometimes. Yeah. 2007, and I think we're quite close to it. But
yeah. Time is so relative. I'm like, the 90s were like 15 years ago? Right?
Yeah.
They were like 25 years ago.
Yeah, it's a shock. Yeah, it's like that meme that says we're closer to this time than we were to that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, really? Are we? And I have to do the math to actually be sure it's right. And it turns out it is.
But that's such a beautiful thing too. And like, I remember my great grandmother, who was born in 1898, and she remembers stories that her family told her of the American Civil War. And so she would tell me stories as a child who was born in 1980, was hearing stories that were handed, oral tradition of stories that were handed from her from the 1860s, which is, the last time Neptune was in Aries. Like, I have this very close connection with a human that was alive that heard stories from that time, which is really mind-boggling to think of. Like, our own experience with history is so much closer than we often realize. Time is weird, things speed up and slow down based on our perspective, but we are living our history now, and we are so connected with the history that is happening now. And that's why, like, I just hammer down, it's so important to document things from your own perspective, not just what you thought you remember, but what you actually remember, like writing it down in the moment, writing down your dreams right when you wake up. So like, you really do capture it, because, we are our own record keepers. If we don't keep records, someone's going to keep them for us, and they might be different from what we experience. So Yeah. Time is weird.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I wanted this day, is because my notes on Neptune Mercury is that I call it the astrologer's aspect. It's an open, peaceful mind, gifts of intuition and insight, flowing imagery and inspiration, the ability to perceive patterns and connections, search for higher meaning, imaginative, mystical, absorbing ideas, creative. So it's like everything that's the best of Neptune, and Mercury being able to bring it through and to communicate it. So it's effect like for that for astrology as well, like perceiving the symbols but finding meaning in them and being able to talk about them and share them, and also that ability to switch off what we've learned from the books as well, and what I do with my crazy note taking and prep work, but also just to lean into the what am I hearing, what am I seeing, and allow those leaps to come through as well. But yeah, fairy tales and mythology and storytelling, and the way that can come through from a chart as well, where we just see something or get that intuitive imaginative leap.
Yeah, like, it's kind of a running joke of like shower thoughts, like things that come to you in the shower, because water is creating that energetic flow and like cleansing you of old ideas and like bringing new life. It's like having really good ideas in the shower. This feels like the astrological moment of like a really good shower thought.
Yeah, and it's always that time when you can't write it down. It's never going to come when you're sat with a blank piece of paper in front of you and you're ready to write. It's always going to be that inconvenient moment, but we have these days and we can make a voice note, not necessarily if you're in the shower, right? This is why I bath, so I can make a note.
Yeah, there's that story of Tom Waits driving in traffic, in LA traffic, and like the song idea comes to him and he's frustrated because he can't write it down. This is before cell phones, and he was like got frustrated at the inspiration. I was like, if you really want to be written song, then you can come to me when at a more opportune time. Otherwise, go bother Leonard Cohen. Like that was like kind of like, can you clearly see I'm driving? Like, why are you doing this? But that's usually when they come in. Yeah.
But that's what they do. And that's, it's part of that turning off your thinking mind and being able to tap into the other side, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that is, Mercury and Neptune both conspire to allow us to do that when we work with them. But yeah, and like the karmic element of this, it's like pulling us into the wheel of fortune as well, that element of the amplification of it, but also the wheel of fortune side of understanding that when we surrender, there's the ups and the downs.
Yeah, the wheel of fortune is Jupiter. Yeah. That's ruling that.
Yeah, and that they're really both imposters, and all there is the experience, I suppose, and what we learn and take away from that. So with that, we move on to the big one.
Look at that. I like that it's like Neptune at 0 degrees, as 0 degrees look like really big, wide eyes open. Like what? Like cartoon, like Oka eyes. So it's like that 0 degrees Aries. And what we've seen leading up to this also is that sextile between Uranus and Saturn. It's still within, a half a degree at that point. So that is also influencing it, between the Pisces and Taurus houses. We haven't talked too much about Uranus and Taurus this week, but that is also happening at the same time that all that Aries and Pisces action is happening. But yeah, Neptune and 0 degree Aries, just wow.
Yeah, stunned into silence. But lovely that the moon is there, even though moon doesn't necessarily enjoy a fire sign, but again, bringing those significations through to us, like our translator. The moon is our translator, planet that's closest to us. So she wants in on that action, that Aries chat as she's separating from the new moon, just beginning to wax, like grow something.
Yeah, the last time this happened was the 1860s. So it was 1861 that it first went in, and then it went back in later that year, and then 1862 it was at 0 degrees Aries, and then 2025. So just thinking about those that time difference, that's how long it takes for Neptune to go through all the signs.
Yeah.
And this is not something we've experienced with this combination of other planets. So we get to experience this,
which is like such a treat and such a significant thing. I think it's 165 years, isn't it, that Pluto's cycle is, the synodic cycle around the zodiac.
Neptune.
Neptune. Yeah. And here at this degree of Aries is like right at the very start of a new 165-year cycle. So yeah, we won't see its like again, but we will see it retrograde back into Pisces and return. So we will see that moment. But this very first step across the threshold just is so significant. So I've got that it's here from March the 30th to October the 22nd, and then it'll move back. So it's like it's departing a home port, like sailing across and then reaching that fiery place of Aries. It's in a sign approximately 14 to 18 years, but I think it was in Pisces for maybe 12. Sometimes it changes. So I've got a lot of notes because I did do a talk on 2025 astrology, so I can run through some of them.
Yeah, I do.
Marking a major shift in how we collectively engage with our ideals, because that's what Neptune sort of represents, our ideals for the collective, because it's thought of as a generational planet because of this long cycle of Pluto, Neptune, Venus are generational planets. So we sometimes see generations by where they have those planets. And like this planet is a dreamer. It's connected to our dreams. And we could see in a Mars-ruled sign, sparks can fly. Like this initiatory sign of Aries, this pioneering sign. So rather than in Pisces, where it was maybe fantasizing or dreaming and being all about peace and mysticism, it's now in the sign of the Ram of Mars, the zodiac sign of the Ram, about action. And maybe it's about protest as well and taking action for what we believe in. But it isn't always about that. It can also signify the ways that aggression can wound us. It can blur the lines between fact and fiction, which we've already seen with Jupiter and Gemini, for example. What's true? Whose facts are whose? You know, what is a real fact anymore? You know, people aren't always sure. And this can teach us that adrenaline rushes can be more destructive than useful when they don't serve a higher purpose, if we don't lean into our beliefs, our ideals, and have a higher compassionate purpose. So staying grounded is going to be so important, and resisting propaganda, whether it's spiritual or political, is going to be essential for honouring and protecting what we believe in, maybe seeing where the collective is moving, but also what you personally believe in. So, as I said before, Neptune will station retrograde on October the 22nd, and then return back to Pisces. And then it will be back in Aries in 2026, and it will be remaining there until 2038 and 2039. So again, it will do that dance across the line to Taurus and Aries. So this is like the teaser, the pilot episode, our first taste of what's in store, suggesting like staying humble and heart centers, because temperatures could rise. You've got this steam that we talked about with the watery sort of Neptune and the heat of Aries. So staying grounded, staying humble is going to help us to stay connected to our own ideals and not be led astray by this data and this debate over facts and whose facts are right and what facts are correct. You know, opinions are not facts. And in Pisces, we've had this race, class, gender, sex debates and those big cultural changes maybe while Neptune was transiting Pisces. And it's worth noting that the Neptune in Pisces before this, in the 1860s, was a lot about smoking cigarettes becoming a nationwide phenomenon, and also the introduction of abolitionism as a movement and spiritualism as well. You know, the seances became mainstream, where before they might have been people were doing them, but it wasn't like people doing them in their drawing rooms as like evening entertainment.
Just looking just at the ingress chart as like a chart of the moment, and seeing that there's mutual reception between Jupiter and Mercury still, because Mercury is at that 29th degree, it's retrograde. So there's mutual reception of that moment. There's mutual reception between the moon and Mars. And so, but they're in a square, like a pretty tight square. You know, it's within it's within like a degree and a half.
Yeah.
And so, you know, having that square, that mutual reception of squares are the nature of Mars. This is very martial, very, very martial. But the deception piece of it also feels pretty loud, having that square by whole sign, maybe not by exact degree, because it's like 14 degrees away between Mercury and Jupiter, does also feel pretty loud. And, you know, looking back at the last time that, you know, Neptune moved into Aries, you know, in the 1860s, 1861, it happened on April 13th, 1861. That was the first battle of the American Civil War, was on that day. And so to have like a moment happen on the inception of this transit, I would just watch this day. This is a complicated day because there's so many things happening overnight, Saturday night into Sunday. But what are the events that happen on this day that color this whole transit that we experience over, the next 13 years? And, we won't be able to determine what happens that day, but just really paying attention to the news. It will be hard because Neptune will have just like blended with Mercury before it goes into Aries, but it does feel kind of like a big timestamp of what is, even just within your own experience. If the Aries house is important to you, if Mars is important to you, if you're in a Aries perfection year, your Mars is your chart ruler, the ruler of the year, whatever. Looking at this day as a day of omens, and I'm all about understanding where fate lies, but also how to shake your fist at fate and anything you can do to kind of carve out as much of your destiny as possible. Of looking at Aries, what do you fight for? Why do you fight? And remembering fighting for righteous reasons and defending those that need to be defended. And standing up and speaking your own voice and doing things very honorably, because to me, that's the best thing about Mars is acting with honor and not just impulse, but to do it honorably. So may we have an honorable Neptune and Aries transit. I would just watch the news, watch your circumstances, watch your environment, document it for history, because that mutual reception between an exiled Jupiter and an exiled and fallen and retrograde Mercury will make the source of information questionable. So being our own reporters for our own dispatches of our own scenes, I think might just be important. And do it because you care, because you want to carve out your own destiny, because you want to shake your fist at the gods, whatever reason. I feel like it's just a day to timestamp and maybe save the newspaper headline or whatever the equivalent is, since newspapers don't really exist that much anymore, that is for March 30th. 2025.
Yeah. And it was interesting when Austin Coppock was talking about the ingress with the American Civil War. He was saying about how it started out. I mean, again, we see Neptune in Jupiter's bound and Mars's decan, with people going and taking picnics to watch the first battles, sitting up on the hill, and like that naivety and optimism, like, this will be fun, as a day out to watch a battle. And then very quickly realizing this was not a fun thing to watch, and again, that misinformation of, let's all watch our boys be honorable and gallant and, have their glory in their medals, and very quickly finding out that no, this was a very unpleasant experience. It's not something you take your kids on a picnic to watch,
Yeah. And this war and the wars, globally that were happening around that were the first to be documented with photographs and daguerreotypes. And so it's like we were able to see the horrors of war. If you had never experienced it before, from those photographs and daguerreotypes that was unseen before. So it was like a real revolution in like having the reality stripped away out of Pisces and given to us in kind of the cold, sheets of metal that were those early photographs with Neptune and Aries.
Yeah. So there may be something like, again, the themes repeating of like the naivety and that misunderstanding, especially with Neptune, of what it's all about and how we expect it to play out, and the reality being something very, very different.
But then also, like, photography became like such a beautiful art, through its time. So it's like it was born from documenting horrors, but then it became like capturing such endless beautiful moments, as an art form, which to me feels, is wrapped with Neptune. So, what new art form is born from kind of unfortunate circumstance through this Neptune and Aries transit? Like we also get to develop, discover, invent that, with this. It's not just Mars, war, injury, fighting, defiance, revolution, rioting. It's not just that. There are other things that are at play. I think because of the last time we went through Neptune and Aries, there was a lot of violence around the globe where these countries started to engage with each other more frequently. I mean, that we've always fought each other. It's just, it almost seems human nature too, but it is a little like, yikes, to think about, not just in the United States, but, all over, because Aries is known as the warrior. It's the fighter. It's the impulsive. It's the one that goes boldly. It's the one that does not ask permission. One that sometimes doesn't ask for forgiveness either. It's like, it's just kind of that edgier sign. So to have Neptune go in there, it's like, what are the limits of our abilities to be warriors. Well, Aries is also very brave and very courageous and takes responsibility eventually. Like if you look at the transition of the decans of Aries and the tarot cards associated with that, it does become so beautiful as it goes through. So it's not just being a fighter, it's fighting because if you put Aries on the first house, that puts Cancer in the fourth. And so like, what does Aries fight for? It fights for that Cancer root, that lunar root. It fights because it cares, but it's definitely a fighter. And I think that's what it's giving that a little reticence of like, what is it going to be? Because we all have an Aries friend. We're like, whew, if you gave them no limits, is that really such a good idea?
And yeah, there was a lot of sports invented with Neptune in Aries as well. A lot of firsts. Skiing was invented as a sport, and the Football Association of Great Britain and Northern Ireland was started during Neptune in Aries last time, and
Nice.
the first professional baseball team in the United States. So we could see, I mean, goodness knows what new sports could come around. But I suppose that's the point, isn't it? Things that we can't even think of, or maybe sports that aren't professional now or recognized as competitive sports could be becoming competitive sports because of that martial nature, and that's like the healthy container again for it. I wonder how Neptune relates to that. I suppose it's that thing of things that we can't think of, bringing that higher nature of it to it.
Or like having like passion and desire around something that you care about, and like understanding, like trying to seek all of the explorations of it, or sharing it, or having it spill over. Neptune feels kind of like that infinity pool that's spilling over. It's like sharing it outside of your immediate environment. There was the town that I grew up in had its own like signature sport, and it started with just kids playing it on one single street. And it never got big, but it was like kind of a very localized game. It was kind of a rendition of baseball, but it developed and became kind of like just a regional city sport because of that. So I like that of, warrior, like sports is kind of like contained warfare. It's like being able to kind of engage with people that you disagree with or that are on an opposite side in kind of a healthy container way. And so having that Mars, aggression and energy kind of be contained within established rules of a sporting game, and having spectators on either side watching it, where it's not just warfare and battlefields and people actually dying, I think is a great hopeful way to look at, what are the sports that are going to be invented. Or, we have the Olympics coming up, what sports are going to be allowed to be Olympic level at this point, because there are ones that are always positioned or petitioned to become Olympic level sports. And does that increase the exposure of that sport and the availability for kids to kind of start to train that? So yeah,
that'll be interesting. And Mandy Ray, who's another Asterosphere Kairos member, did this wonderful slide for her year ahead talk, giving us some like wonderful delineations for Neptune in Aries for 2025. And she's laid this out, and she's given us the key historical dates here. She's gone back even further to 1697 to 1712, 1861, 1874. But she's given us like the revolutionary vision and change. So the change being the Aries side of it, and Neptune having the vision, radical ideas and new beginnings, courageous action, pioneering spirit, spiritual awakening through bold pursuits, ideological shifts and breakthroughs. So that would be so lovely to see the ideological shifts, like with capitalism being questioned so much, but we haven't got anything else that could take its place yet. And wouldn't it be interesting if something, especially like Christa was saying with Uranus connecting with Saturn, and then we're going to see these outer planets all coming into connections, and maybe there's that chance of something else coming in to make this real ideological shift coming through. Creative exploration and artistic innovation, impulsive moves and uncharted paths, transformative movements and rebellion. Those changes that come from crisis, when things aren't working for people, people are ready to stand up and make those changes. Expansion and conquest of new frontiers. I mean, what else is there? Other planets?
Ocean.
The ocean, and other planets. We'll have to find out. But we're still in that time when the Uranus Jupiter is flowing forth and separating. So we're still seeing announcements of what's come from that. So it's an interesting time for for announcements of things like that. Intellectual and spiritual reformation, fearless pursuit of higher truths, dynamic leadership and visionary drive. We need that so badly. Our leaders are failing us. I think that's not a controversial statement to say.
No.
We need that. Embracing the unknown with confidence, challenging old structures and creating change, and unleashing imagination and breaking traditions. Certainly big shifts ahead. Ties in with what we were saying about the before and the after, and this 2025 being seen as this transitory year. And once we move into these late 20s and the 30s, 2030s, things not being the same as what we've known in 2024. Certainly this Neptune shift is kicking it all off for us. Feels like we're just climbing this roller coaster, and then once we're on the ride, we can't get off, we're buckled in.
There's a Hunter Thompson quote: buy the ticket, take the ride.
Yeah.
We all bought the ticket by choosing to be here, for better or worse.
Yeah. I like to think it's a choice to have been here at this time. May you live in interesting times. It's like, yeah, really.
I like this quote here on the screen too. It's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change, attributed to Charles Darwin. And I'm reading this book called Fluke, and it talks about the idea of convergence or contingency, and like how random it seems, because how random it is for survival of species, including the development of our own species. But just like, we live in such complicated times, it's hard to understand how, things converge. And I see that in astrology too, the convergence of all these transits and the interplay of our own natal promise with the transits that we live through, how it affects us differently, and just when bad things happen, we try to reconcile, like, was I always going to end up here? What did I deserve this to happen to me? We don't say that when good things happen. We just kind of like, oh, I was just lucky, but that same lucky randomness happens when bad things happen, but we take it so much more to heart, and we take responsibility, or we feel personally attacked by the circumstances when bad things happen, but we don't have that when it's good things. But it's like the fluke of the both of them are kind of equal,
Yeah.
And to give ourselves some grace, and to accept the bad things when they happen and accept the good things when they happen, and just try to do your best along the way.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a nice way to close this out.
We're going to need all of the help we can give each other.
Yeah.
I like the challenging old structures and creating change, not usurping our own power to people that are, political leaders or religious leaders or financial leaders or whatever. I feel like Neptune and Aries is like putting the responsibility back on our own laps, and how empowering and how exhaustive that can be. But I feel like that will be a good continuation. Pluto's in Aquarius, Neptune was in Pisces, sextiling Pluto in Capricorn. Now Neptune is going to be in Aries, sextile Pluto in Aquarius. And that the dynamics between Aquarius and Aries is very different between the dynamic between Capricorn and Pisces. And so I feel like it will be fresh and new and maybe faster, because it's in fire and air, and that dynamic is just, it's upward, as opposed to descending down. It's like going upward, and it's upward with that kind of fuel between the air and the fire. So yeah, maybe we challenge old structures. I feel like that's a good way that we can each individually challenge it and put that Neptune to use.
Indeed. So that finishes out the month of March. Thank you so much for joining me, Christa.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been great, and especially seeing through that transition, the eclipses and Neptune moving. It's been great to chat through it with you. So I'll be back in April, looking at the 2nd to the 9th of April next week, and I'll be with Shauna from Smart Astro, and you can contact her at Gmail, smartastro@gmail.com. So thank you so much for joining us, and if you've enjoyed this, please remember to comment. We love to hear your thoughts on Neptune in Aries, and also please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sonia.